Hey, what's up? It's James Fry here. Welcome to the Indoor Gardening Masterclass. And what I'm going to show you in this short three-part video series is everything that I've learned over the last decade about how to grow amazing plants and food indoors. So this first session is all about the placement of your indoor garden, where you're going to put it in your house, and the important considerations to make before you commit to where you're growing. So let's dive in, shall we? Okay, straight into it. So when a lot of people get into indoor gardening, they just think like, oh, well, I'm just going to put this in whatever space makes sense. Most often that's the garage, but pump the brakes a little bit, because before you make a decision on where to put your garden, I want you to consider these following four options that I've had experience growing in. So the first one is an uninsulated garage. So the only benefit that I could see that I had from growing in an uninsulated garage was that it's not in your living space, right? Maybe you don't want a garden growing in your living room or in the guest bedroom or something like that. I personally would love that, but maybe that's not for you. So that's one of the only main benefits that I can think of. In this picture here, I had what was actually an aquaponics system years ago when I used to do and recommend aquaponics, which I don't anymore. But anyway, this was a lot of work and it was a major hassle. And the reason for that is that you need more lighting than you would in some of the other scenarios that I'm going to show you in a minute. You need a lot more ventilation because it's often a closed space without many windows. And you might even need a dehumidifier because the lack of windows and doors makes it so that it can get very humid very quickly. You might need to heat and cool the structure. If you have, especially an uninsulated garage, you're definitely going to need to heat it in the winter, and you might even need to cool it in the summer. Having insulation in the garage helps mitigate that a bit, but it still can be less than ideal inside that environment. Also, for that reason, because of the extra heating and cooling and the extra appliances you might need more electric power than expected. And as a result, you might have to end up upgrading the electrical service. In my case, I had to hire an electrician to come out and beef up the power supply so that I could run all these different things. And eventually I was at the point where this is way too much energy use just for a garden. And I did have fish growing at the time. They needed tank heaters and such, which is one of the reasons why I don't do aquaponics anymore. So moving on, I just wanted to take a brief moment to mention that you're in good hands. I've been growing indoors for a long time. As you can see in this Facebook post that I pulled up, this picture was posted in 2006. And it's the year 2022, so I've been doing this for over 15 years. I've grown in a lot of different indoor environments, and so just if you have any questions that you are facing with your indoor growing, just know that I probably have been there and done that before. These are a bunch of pictures from when I was growing indoors in some of the other scenarios you'll see, and it's just awesome to be able to have fresh produce growing when it's so cold outside. You can see I had hats and jackets on in these pictures. So what I wanted to underscore and really bring to your attention is that your home is actually already a controlled growing environment. When we talk about growing in greenhouses, growing indoors, that's called controlled environment agriculture. And so in your case, in anyone who lives in a home, you have a thermostat, which is very handy for keeping your temperature in the house stable so that you're comfortable. It just so happens that plants are also super comfortable in the same spaces as humans. And also, we like having plants in our environment. That's why people have house plants, and it makes the environment much more enjoyable to be in. And that's just yet another reason why you can have an indoor grow going. And not only do you get to enjoy the benefit of just having plants around, you also get to eat them, which is pretty cool. And every gardener dreams of having a greenhouse, but the reality is that you already have a greenhouse. It's your home, and that is the best place to start. I'm not saying don't do a greenhouse. It's just an additional project. And so if you want to get familiar with growing food indoors or controlled environment agriculture or controlled environment gardening, the best and easiest place to start is in your home, because I can guarantee you that you have extra space that you're not using even for a small garden. So the next possible location that I recommend is a basement or a utility room, which you can turn into a grow room. So some of the benefits of that are that typically a basement has a stable temperature year-round. Basements are dug into the ground, and anywhere in the world about 4 feet down, you're going to have a stable temperature of roughly 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and it won't fluctuate very much between summer and winter. It's going to be very stable. So that environment is already very good for plants to grow in, and you won't need to have that much supplemental heat. In fact, it might be just perfect. It might be even 70 degrees year round. It's just perfect for growing plants. It's also hidden from view, if in case you don't want your neighbors to know that you're growing basil. And if you make a mess, like if you spill some water or some soil or whatever, it's really no problem, because typically basements are unfinished areas with a concrete floor, and if you make a little mess in there, it's no big deal. It's not like you're going to get it on your carpet or anything. So those are some of the benefits of growing in a basement. Now, some of the drawbacks are you do need lighting, and honestly, I do recommend lighting for almost anyone growing indoors, which you'll see in just a moment. You're definitely going to need ventilation because, again, basements and utility rooms like laundry rooms are closed spaces. And depending on your climate, if it's very, very humid and you don't have a lot of access to ventilation, you might end up needing a dehumidifier, which we'll talk about in a later lesson. And of course, you're going to need some electric power. Moving on to the next best possible location is ye olde sunny window. This is where some people really get tripped up, so I want to spend some extra time on this. So in this picture here, I have what I call my Revolution Garden system, which now is used by over 11,000 students in 22 countries. It just grows like crazy. And what I'm growing here is a plant called golden berries. It's a vining crop, also known as Inca berries. They're very nutritious and they grow very prolifically, produce a lot of fruits. And it's in a south-facing window with a sliding glass door. So this is a really cool option if you don't want to get into grow lights and stuff like that. The only thing to be aware of is if you're trying to grow just from the light of a sunny window, is that if you put it on the north side, the south side, or the east side of the house, the plants are really going to struggle. They're going to be stretching for that light, and they're going to start, looking all spindly and long, and they're just going to be desperate for light, reaching out for it as much as possible. And that is just not going to work out. One thing to be aware of in this is that in the Northern Hemisphere, so North America, United States, Canada, the sun tracks across the sky from east to west in the south. And at the winter solstice, when the sun is at the lowest point of the year, that sunlight is going to stream into the window very nicely, and it's going to create a lot of light that plants can use to grow and photosynthesize. In the summertime, however, that sun is going to be really high in the sky, and because of the way most houses are built, they're meant to shade out that summer sun from coming in the windows. And so you're not going to be able to grow too much just because the angle of the sun is not really able to access and shine in and get at those plants. However, the main thing I want to point out here is that almost the only window that you can get away with growing plants in is a south-facing window. Ideally, a very large south-facing window, or in my case, a sliding glass door. So some of the benefits of this are you can grow with zero energy. You don't have to get into grow lights. You don't really have to get into too much ventilation because you can just open the window and ventilate it nicely. And so those are two really great benefits of growing with just a south-facing sunny window. The negative sides, the downsides, are that you're kind of limited to vining crops. So in my case here, I'm growing golden berries. You could also grow cherry tomatoes. You could grow a passion fruit vine if you wanted to. And the reason why you can only pretty much get away with the vining crops is because they will self-train, meaning that they'll grow towards the light where they can, basically you'll notice that these plants, they pretty much press themselves up against the window so that they could get as much light as possible, and only then did they start growing much faster and producing fruits. And so that's the limitation of growing in a window without any supplemental lighting. As a result, you're also going to be limited somewhat to small fruits. So again, cherry tomatoes, smaller fruits. You might be able to get away with a passion fruit. However, the passion fruits do want a lot more direct sunlight and heat. And in my case, these were the golden berries I had growing. The reason why you're limited to somewhat small fruits is because when you're growing outdoors, the plants are able to access light from all different directions and helps them photosynthesize more, which they need a lot of that light when they're producing larger fruits. So last but not least is the next possible location, which is my favorite, which is what I recommend the most, which is doing a hybrid of the sunny window plus some supplemental lighting. So in this case, I'm also in that south-facing window with a sliding glass door on it, and I have some lighting above. So the great part about this is that you need lighting, but a lot less, and you can grow wider crop diversity for that reason. In this picture here, I'm growing mustard greens, radishes, kale, parsley, all sorts of different herbs that are my favorites, and it just grew like crazy. Also, you get better growth, I've noticed, because it does like to have some of that supplemental sunlight as well. And easier ventilation, again, because you can just open that sliding glass door or window and get that ventilation going. You get access to full spectrum light from the sun, and that in turn reduces your electric needs. So I had a light fixture above this, and by the way, we're gonna go deep on lighting in the next episode in this masterclass. I was able to run that light at about half capacity because there was so much sunlight streaming into that window to help the plants. The downside is you're still gonna need lighting, but less, and you're still gonna need some ventilation, but again, less. And so that makes this my absolute favorite location to grow in. All right, so given all that information, I want you to find a spot in your house that makes the most sense for you, given the orientation of your house, if you have any south-facing windows. If not, go ahead, go with the basement. You can go with the garage as well. Just be aware of what you're getting into. Next video 2, we're going to talk all about lighting and how important it is to pick the correct lighting fixture, as well as how to not get ripped off on Amazon, how to make sure you're not buying a crappy product. I'm going to recommend specific lighting options for you that are going to make sense for what you're wanting to grow. So I will see you in the next video. You can click the link in the description to go to video 2. I will see you there.